It became a $600 million global phenomenon. It shocked audiences with its brutality. It sparked outrage, praise, and debate across the world. The Passion of the Christ was a movie Hollywood didn't even want to exist. No studio, no safety net, and according to its own director, no support. So how did this film get made? Why did so many try to stop it? And what supernatural things happened behind the scenes that still gives people the chills? Mel Gibson didn't make The Passion because he thought it was a good career move. In fact, it was probably the worst one. He said plainly, nobody wanted to touch it.
There was like Hollywood resistance to that movie. Like people didn't like that you were making it.
There was a lot of opposition to it. If you ever hit on that subject matter, you're gonna get people going.
So why do it? For Gibson, this wasn't just a film, it was personal. He believed the story of Jesus' crucifixion wasn't just important, it was the most important story ever told. And in his view, it hadn't been portrayed with enough weight. Too clean, too safe, too distant. So he decided to do the opposite. He wanted audiences to feel it, not just understand it, experience it. That's why he went all in, filming in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew, focusing intensely on the suffering, pulling from not just the Gospels, but vivid historical and mystical writings.
The idea was that we're all responsible for this, that his sacrifice was for all mankind.
This wasn't a studio-friendly approach. It was a risk, and an enormous personal gamble. Because Gibson didn't just direct the film, he paid for it himself. Now here's where things get interesting. Studios didn't just pass on the film because it was unusual, they were worried. Really worried. First, the obvious. It's a religious film. It's being done using dead languages, what studio reps termed extreme violence. That alone made it a tough sell. But the real controversy? Accusations of anti-Semitism. Before the film even released, early reactions raised concerns that it could reinforce the idea that Jewish leaders were responsible for the death of Jesus. Major organizations like the ADL spoke out. Religious leaders weighed in. And suddenly, this wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural flashpoint. From a studio perspective, that's a nightmare scenario. Public backlash, boycotts, reputational damage. So instead of fighting it, Hollywood stepped back. Quietly. No big ban, no official shutdown, they just didn't open the door. Now imagine being the actor asked to play Jesus in this situation. That's where Jim Caviezel comes in. And before he even accepted the role, Mel Gibson gave him a warning. If you do this movie, you may never work in this town again.
Hey, you're smoking a cigarette, and he goes, do you still want to play this Jesus guy? If you do, you may never work in this town again.
Let that sink in. This wasn't a promise of fame, it was a warning of major consequences. Caviezel said yes anyway. Why? Because for him, this wasn't just a role, it was something deeper.
And then I went back to when I was a young man in the theater, and I said, oh my God, this is why he called me to become an actor. And I was scared for a moment, and then this peace came over me. And I could feel it was from heaven, and I said, look man, we're all called to carry our cross. If you don't pick up and carry your cross, you will be crushed by the weight of it.
And then there's the detail people can't ignore. He was 33 years old. His initials are JC. Coincidence? Probably, but it adds to the legend. He later said,
I don't want the people to see Jim Caviezel, I want them to see Jesus.
Now this is where the story takes a turn, because filming The Passion of the Christ wasn't just difficult, it was bizarre. Let's start with the most famous incident. Jim Caviezel is struck by lightning. Yes, actually struck. He later described it like this.
The clouds were, it felt like I could jump up and touch them. And that was very mystical. You could feel something in the ground. The wind was blowing, and then I couldn't hear the wind. I could feel the suctioning occur. It was probably more like 3 seconds. It felt like 5, but it was probably less than that. And then boom, it shot me out of my body. I saw the back side, not here.
He survived, but that wasn't the only thing. The assistant director was also struck by lightning. Then there were the injuries. Caviezel dislocated his shoulder carrying the cross, suffered from pneumonia, experienced hypothermia during crucifixion scenes. He was accidentally whipped during filming.
I couldn't feel my hands anymore. My hands were numb. At the end of the movie, my body's blue. My heart was in AFib. I would have to have 2 major heart surgeries, including open heart.
All of this was happening while filming one of the most physically demanding roles imaginable. Even the environment seemed to turn on them. Sudden storms, dark skies during key scenes, unpredictable weather. Now, you can explain all of this logically. Outdoor filming is risky. Weather happens. Accidents happen. But when you stack all of it together, it starts to feel like more than just a tough shoot. And that's why to this day, people still debate, was it coincidence or something else? Despite all the resistance, the film was released in February of 2004, and Hollywood was watching closely, probably expecting it to struggle. In all honesty, most of them were probably hoping it would fail. It didn't. It exploded. Over $370 million in the United States, over $600 million worldwide, for an independently funded, R-rated, subtitled religious film. That's almost unheard of. The same industry that passed on it had to watch it become one of the most successful films of all time. But success didn't come without consequences. For Jim Caviezel, his career shifted.
Why would playing Jesus Christ destroy your relationship with Hollywood?
Well, they did it immediately when I took the film. I was on all the studio lists. They have to answer that question. The Christian bigotry is the most accepted form of bigotry there is.
He continued working, but he never quite returned to mainstream leading man status in the same way. For Mel Gibson, the film cemented his reputation as a bold, uncompromising filmmaker, but it also intensified scrutiny around him. Still, the success gave him something powerful: independence, the ability to pursue projects on his own terms. However, Mel Gibson went on to face severe personal and professional decline. Scandals, arrests, leaked recordings, and allegations of anti-Semitism. While largely ostracized from mainstream Hollywood for years, he continued filmmaking. Apocalypto, Hacksaw Ridge, Flight Risk. Mel kept himself moving. And that brings us to what might be the most intriguing part of this entire story. Mel Gibson isn't done. His next major project? A sequel to The Passion called The Resurrection of the Christ. But this isn't a simple follow-up. Gibson has described it as non-linear, philosophical, exploring realms beyond the physical world, not just the resurrection itself, but what happens beyond it, both before this life and after. Think less Part 2, and more a continuation of the story on an entirely different level. And that's not all. Gibson's plan is to make a trilogy. The Resurrection of the Christ will be released in 2 parts. And if you thought The Passion was controversial, just wait. These next chapters might set the religious and entertainment worlds on fire. So, when you look back at The Passion of the Christ, it's more than just a film. It's a story about risk, controversy, and unexpected success. A movie Hollywood didn't want, that audiences turned into a phenomenon, and a production so intense, people are still debating if they witnessed miracles or spiritual opposition on that set. So, as we wait for the next installation of Mel Gibson's trilogy, the question we have to ask ourselves is, was it just a film or something more? Let me know what you think in the comments.